period leaves would actually increase workplace sexism, because a lot of people feel that women have often been offered things at a silver platter, and looking at their female counterparts not working as much as them would just irk the male associates.
Instead of making it such a generic term and calling it menstrual leave, I think if the pain is so severe, it should be considered as a medical leave. Because if it is so generalized and called as a menstrual leave, then this could actually lead to a lot of sexism in the workplace.
Period leave basically will lead to enhanced sexism at the workplace for more reasons than one.
I don't think period leaves will increase workplace sexism. In fact, I think it's time to acknowledge the fact that periods are extremely difficult, and it's pretty outrageous for people to expect women to work under excruciating pain.
Good afternoon and welcome to JSJC TV. I'm Isha Bhatnagar and I will be the moderator of today's panel discussion on period leaves. So we have three panelists for today's discussion. First, we have Dr. Deepa Dewan, who is the head of OBGYN at Max Hospital, Gurgaon. Next, we have Ms. Kathy Walkling, the co-founder of Femme, which is a women-led social enterprise that works towards creating healthy and sustainable menstrual practices. Last but not least, we have Ms. Geeti Verma, who is head of employee engagement and development at Pathways World School, a reputed international school in Gurgaon. Thank you all for being here today. So I want to start by giving a short overview on this new policy that Zomato rolled out in August 2020. So Zomato wants to foster a culture of trust, truth, and acceptance where all women, including transgender people, can avail up to 10 days of period leaves in a year. Now, this is just the gist of it. Zomato received a lot of backlash because many thought that this would increase workplace sexism, but some thought it's a step towards equality. So that's what the video that I just played spoke about. So I would like to start with Dr. Dewan. So during my research, I noticed that a lot of the controversies regarding the leave were centered around the corporate setting. So I want to ask you, Dr. Dewan, whether this policy is practical in a medical setting where the ratio of health workers for male is to female in India is 1:6. So do you think this is a viable policy?
See, as far as the viability of the
Dr. Dewan, can you
policy,
hear us?
Can you hear me? Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me now?
Yes, go on. We can hear you.
Yeah. So, Isha. So I wouldn't be able to comment on the viability of the policy in terms of, what is the ratio of men to females in corporate setup.
Right.
But what I like to comment on this is that definitely there are women who have a lot of issues with their menses. And there is literature which says that 24 to 91% of women can have problems like cramping pains during their menstrual cycles. And the degree, so there's no literature which can really say how much or how many would really have problems, because there are a lot of factors on which it is based. So it can be something like, if somebody, it depends on what a person's pain threshold is. And so if there are women who would have a lot of problem because of their menstrual cycles being painful, might actually need to take leaves to be at home. So most of these women would just call in sick and say they're unwell. So if they have the option wherein they can call in and say they have their periods and they're having a lot of dysmenorrhea, and that's the reason they need to be on leave. So I feel that's quite justified. But then, of course, it depends on, their 10 days of leaves in a whole year. I think that's a justified thing for a female who might be having a lot of dysmenorrhea, because there are women who have a lot of dysmenorrhea. They have to take painkillers during their cycles. But again, like I said, that I'm not the right one to comment on the viability or the justification in terms of the men to female, male to female ratio in workplaces, right? Isha? Isha, anything else that you need from my end? Isha, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm sorry for the connectivity issues. Can you please repeat what you said? I'm sorry for the disruption.
Isha, I couldn't hear the question. Can you please repeat? I
Yes,
couldn't hear you.
yes, I wanted to know if this policy is viable in a medical setting where the ratio for
Isha, I
male
cannot
is
hear you. It's not clear.
okay. We will. Can the others hear me?
Yes, I can. I can hear you, Isha.
I can't hear you, Isha.
Yes, I can hear too.
Okay, Doctor, we'll come back to you. Ms. Geeti, I want to ask you, what are the implications of applying such a policy in a corporate or educational setting where the ratio for women is higher?
First of all, I think before I start, I'd just like to put this disclaimer that the thoughts that I'm going to share today are just personally my thoughts and how I look at it. How I look at the whole menstruation leave policy. I think before we get into the implications, it's that's the outcome of really devising a policy. I think what is important for us, as women, is it's to understand that right from a very early age, right from our school days, when we actually get our first period, we are actually conditioned and programmed to deal with this gift of nature. So throughout our school life, throughout our college life, it's not like we've got any special menstruation leave per se. I mean, I'm sure we've given our board exams on the first day of menstruation. We've gone ahead for various challenges and dealt with various challenges throughout the education life. So I personally feel that I think just because now we are in the professional arena, we operationalizing menstruation leaves is not really something that is viable. It's now my HR mind that's talking, and if we look at that, then there are other aspects also that we need to also consider. There is menopause, and there are different challenges that women face during menopause, but there is nothing like a menopause leave. Homemakers, at the end of the day, homemakers, there is no break for them. So even on their first day of menstruation, they manage the house, they manage children, they manage family responsibilities. So if we look at it from a larger spectrum, I think it's nature versus nurture. So women are organically, constantly nurturing themselves to deal with challenging situations, and I think that's how we should look at it. And yeah, Dr. Deepa mentioned that, yes, I mean, if it is an extreme situation, let's say if women or women, section of women have debilitating periods, or it becomes very difficult for them to work during their first, second day, or throughout the phase of menstruation. Obviously, organizations in today's times, and from times to come, I mean, there are organizations. I personally talk about my organization. I mean, we are very employee centric, and we go to any and every extent. The management goes to any and every extent, to look after their staff members. So instead of um, taking this gift of nature and putting it in the basket of sympathy and empathy, I think we should look at it as something that we are dealing with naturally, and it's a natural process. And the organization is there to support us in case we do need, a medical leave.
So, do you think that menstrual leaves can simply be added to sick leaves for females? Is that a better application of this policy?
I'm not going to say added in the sense that, so let's say, for example, if an organization has 14 casual leaves, come sick leaves, in a given year, I don't think any addition to that is needed. Like I said, I think if it is a genuine situation, we can avail leaves off that quota, and I just take it as a medical leave rather than branding it or labeling it as menstruation leaves, because we can't generalize it.
Right.
It's not like all women, kind of face the challenge. But yeah, there are section of women, and I think we need to recognize the emotional, physical, hormonal changes that women go through pre, post, and during. So yeah, that's my view on that.
Okay. So, Miss Kathy, do you think if women are given, if women continue to take menstrual leaves under sick leaves, do you think that would further increase the stigmatization around menstruation and possibly deem menstruation as a sickness or illness that many people still believe it to be?
I'm not sure if I fully understand your question. I think that menstruation is actually a normal process, and there can be, women can have difficult periods and have sort of pathologies associated with menstruation. So I think, like anything, if that's the case, it can be part of sick leave, and women can take or menstruators can take leave accordingly. But what concerns me with institutionalizing policy around menstrual leave is that I think it can tend to over-pathologize menstruation. And, I think that there are ways that the idea of period leave, I think, is kind of well-intentioned. It's meant to sort of give more legitimacy to the needs of menstruators, and sometimes to make it possible for them to recognize that sometimes leave is necessary. But I'm not personally believing that institutionalizing it as a policy is actually going to be helpful for the cause of women overall. So I don't know, did I address your question?
Right. And do you think simpler steps should be implemented prior to rolling out such a policy?
Yeah, definitely. I think that the key word is really flexibility rather than sort of imposing a policy. I think that there are a number of things we can do to make environments, workplaces more friendly for menstruation. For example, just creating culture around where it's possible to even talk about the needs that we might have during menstruation, and have more literacy and more safety. Because I think sometimes even asking for, the idea is that, if we have period leave, then maybe we don't actually have to ask for leave. It's been kind of, implemented in a way to avoid that conversation. Whereas I think we've got to all get better at just being able to talk about menstruation and normalize it as just a natural part of life. So I think there's just a whole conversation, and making it more possible to have those conversations in the workplace is one step. I think in general, access to products, rest time, but in particular, I think just flexibility. I think sometimes, it might be the first day where a woman may need to have leave, might be more the second day. It might be not at all. So again, I think to allow this flexibility is really the most important. And maybe it might be for a few hours during a day where there's a need to take some rest. Maybe rest spaces can be provided in the workplace, or maybe it can be taken as sick leave, adjusted for later on. I think we're all learning what it's like now to live in these COVID times and working from home, and more flexibility. And I think this is something that can be mostly absorbed within, our normal work life, actually. Not undermining the necessity of sometimes having leave, but at the same time, if it becomes imposed, I think it just will actually unwittingly undermine all our efforts towards gender equity rather than enhancing it. And then women will be more and more perceived as more expensive workers, as maybe less reliable workers. And I think we'll end up creating a backlash that was an unintended consequence of maybe what was a well-intended thought process.
Right. So I hate to break it to all of you, but we're actually short on time. So we will have to conclude the discussion over here. But thank you all so much for being a part of this insightful conversation and talking about a topic that needs to be talked about, which is menstruation. It was lovely having all of you here today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Isha, for having us.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye,
Thank you.
everybody.
See you. Bye bye.
Thank you.